Diabetes Revolution podcast with Dr. Sarah Townley, the type 2 diabetes coach, clinical pharmacist, and mom of 6 angels. You don't have to struggle and fight with your blood sugars for the rest of your life. I'm here to teach you the skills you need to control and even reverse this disease. There is such a thing as getting off your meds and creating a future free from diabetes. And you can have it too. Let's get down to business. What's up, my friends? I'm coming to you today from a lit up sunny Billings, Montana. I can't tell you how many times in the last week I have thought about summer. I love summer, and even though I'm just here in the middle of February, I'm feeling the summer vibes. They're coming. And I know it's still a ways away, but we're getting some teasers in, and I cannot tell you how much joy it brings me to think of flip-flops and sleeping in and sitting in the sun on the front porch. And really, that is the essence of today's topic, is the experience of relaxing and resting and enjoying. And I want to talk to you about stress management because for a long time, I really underappreciated how destructive stress is on the body. Once I started working with clients, especially like one-on-one clients, I started to see how significant and important it is for people to become aware of their stress levels and to address them. In fact, I strongly believe that many of my clients developed type 2 diabetes, developed insulin resistance as a response to chronic stress in their lives. There is no secret out there about how anxiety and depression and just stress, chronic stress in people's lives increase insulin resistance. And today I'm going to explain to you in those nerdy terms a little bit how it actually happens in the body. But more importantly, I want to speak to you today about how to use practical tips, how to use easy real-life tools that only take moments in your day to shift yourself out of that high stress mode into a peaceful, relaxed mode, and why this is going to be so critical for you in managing your blood sugars. Most people are really unaware of how stress of any kind is affecting their bodies, especially when it comes to their blood sugars. And that is why one of the biggest advantages of having a continuous glucose monitor, like a Freestyle Libre, that's one of the biggest advantages of those devices is that you begin to really get the signals from the body and have the opportunity to connect and appreciate how different things that are happening in your life, especially in your emotional life, any kind of physical pain, any kind of stress-inducing mechanism, how it's affecting your body. I now believe that stress management in all of its forms and all the different types of stresses that we're going to talk about today is just as critical for you in being successful in reversing your type 2 diabetes and keeping it that way as what you eat, right? That seems to be like the most important thing, right? Drinking water and what you eat, all of those things are for sure going to be critical pieces of knowledge and sets of tools that you're going to need to do in order to reverse your diabetes. But I want to tell you that stress management may be just as important or more important than those other things if you're a person who lives in a high stress state most of the time. So let's talk about what's going on in the body that makes stress in all of its forms create more insulin resistance, cause you to have high blood sugar spikes, cause you to not be able to make progress in losing weight. Because for sure, stress hormones are going to directly interfere with those kinds of objectives. The stress hormones that I'm talking about are released by the body, mostly from the adrenal glands. These are things like cortisol and norepinephrine, also known as adrenaline. These two stress hormones are doing a lot of damage and wreaking havoc on the body when it is being released on a continuous basis for long periods of time. But let's rewind for just a second. What's the point of these? Because remember, I am a firm believer and teach lovingly that your body is perfectly designed how it is and has a logic and reason behind everything that it's doing. And when you begin to trust your body and learn from it, you're going to see that its innate intelligence is always attempting to work in your favor. And so what is the reason for our stress response? Probably you've heard this before, but just to make sure we're starting off on the most foundational basic knowledge for you to build on, the adrenal glands are very important for you to be able to mount an appropriate stress response. They were instrumental in our evolution and our survival in order for us to be able to do what we needed to do when experiencing a threat to our lives. So most people call this a fight or flight or freeze response, right? This is our survival response. When threatened, like if we were being threatened by, physically by some kind of predator, or we were in a dangerous situation where we needed to act quickly, our bodies and our brains are designed to keep us alive as a priority. And the adrenal glands are going to respond by pushing out these powerful adrenaline cortisol hormones to allow us to respond quickly and powerfully in those situations. What does it look like? It looks like increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, increased energy availability. That means glucose being made available from the liver quickly. It means mental clarity. It means the eyes are able to focus on the threat. Now, this is all well and good if you need to respond rapidly and quickly for brief periods of time in order to survive. Now, what's going on in our modern environment is that because of the types of stressors that we have being like life stressors that happen over long periods of time, we have a stress response, although the stress response is now becoming a chronic response because those stressors don't go away. If there's something like a financial stress, relationship stress, a physical pain, like chronic pain, these are all types of stresses that exist over long periods of time, and the body is responding as if they are acute, but over chronic periods of time. And I want to explain to you why these hormones being released on a chronic basis do so much damage at the cellular level, at the physiological level. So if cortisol and adrenaline are released in order to increase your heart rate and your blood pressure, they're also going to cause your body to do some very important things to make energy available to you. Two of those things that I think you will probably understand if you have type 2 diabetes is that at the pancreatic beta cell level, those hormones will inhibit the secretion of insulin. So they actually interfere with your body secreting insulin. So you have less insulin around. In addition, they stimulate the release of glucose from your liver. Okay, so they will cause your liver to push out large amounts of glucose because they want to make energy available to the body in order to respond appropriately to stress. Now, what happens over chronic periods of time is that you now are having a state where you aren't making as much insulin and you're pushing out glucose more so than you need. And this is at the expense of muscle tissue. So your body will actually break down and make glucose from muscle tissue. This is really interesting because people who have a high chronic stress level sometimes have an appearance where they are storing fat viscerally. So they're fat in the middle like an apple, and then they're really skinny on the legs and on the buttocks and other places on their body. So you can kind of see this body type or shape emerge in people who live in chronic stress, appearing as if they have no muscle or very small amounts of muscle around their extremities, but also very heavy and tight, like the abdomen is very tight like a basketball, okay? And that's because the way these hormones are causing your body to make energy out of muscle tissue in response to being stimulated to produce excessive amounts of glucose, no matter what, okay? Because it's meant to help you survive. Survival is paramount. Always the body prioritizes survival. And so in a stress response, it's going to do the same thing. Now, those hormones also interfere with the use of glucose at the muscle tissue. They increase insulin resistance. Okay, so that's in addition to making more glucose and decreasing insulin secretion. You're also directly having a process where insulin's not able to work properly at the muscle site. And then in addition, we know there's some collateral damage that's done when you have these stress hormones floating around all the time. They interfere with normal thyroid function. That means you're going to have a decrease in your basal metabolic rate, how much energy, how much metabolism your body is resting at. And then also you see weight gain in that situation. And people know what stress eating is, right? Stress eating can be for a few different things. However, it can also be in response to just this need to constantly be dumping energy out into the bloodstream. And so it increases your appetite, like your true physical hunger can be noticeably increased in a state of chronic stress. And people will just simply eat more, not to relieve emotional stress or to be like an emotional eater, but simply because they're hungry. So I've summarized kind of briefly like what's going on when you have diabetes or insulin resistance and you're in a state of chronic stress. And I want to juxtapose that or contrast that with where human beings are really meant to reside in most of our time. So the opposite of fight or flight and freeze, which is a state of high sympathetic nervous system tone, survival mode is what we have been talking about. This is the opposite of how human beings are meant to live our lives. We are meant to live our lives mostly in a state of high parasympathetic nervous system tone. This looks like rest, digest, reproduce, heal, sleep. These are all states where our parasympathetic nervous system should be dominating. That's how come people who have high stress don't digest well, right? They have all kinds of belly problems and digestive issues is because their bodies are not in the mode to spend the energy to digest their food. It also is not conducive to healing. If you're not resting, your body's not having the opportunity to heal. If you're not sleeping deeply and restfully, your body is not able to heal in that time. And so if you know that you're supposed to be in a rest and digest mode or R&R mode, rest and relax, enough so that your body can recover and heal, it begins to become clear why living in survival mode all the time is a process of constant deterioration, constant taxing, and slow destruction of the body. When you don't allow time to rest and heal, you're going to slowly deplete your body. And on most people's bodies eventually develop disease or even just shut down. It's a lot like if you were to not ever allow your car to get repairs, to get maintenance, to turn off and just have no engine running. Like if you just ran your car constantly and did not do basic maintenance and refuel and do all of the things that it needs to do in order to function, it isn't going to be very long before that car is just going to stop going, right? Same thing with your body. So now that you understand the difference between survival mode and that rest and relax mode, I want to talk about the types of stressors that will put you in a state of survival mode because some of these are going to surprise you, Okay. And if you're a person who's been wearing a CGM and has been monitoring your blood sugar closely, you probably know for yourself many of the stressors that cause your blood sugar to spike. And some of you are going to have no idea why your blood sugar is spiking sometimes, and it's going to be one of these reasons. Okay. So I like to separate stressors into two categories. First is going to be physical stressors, and the second is going to be emotional stressors. Both of these types of stressors induce a stress response in the body. Physical types of stress include things like sleep deprivation, physical pain, can even be something as simple as sunburn. Okay, but chronic pain or any kind of pain that's going on, like I have a client I'm thinking of right now who has had knee replacements. She has a lot of pain with that. So physical pain is a big one. Any kind of an infection in the body, something even as simple as a cold or a UTI, any kind of an infection on the body is a physical stress that it will respond to in order to help you survive. Another unknown, like little known type of physical stressor that can spike your sugar is intense exercise. Okay, this is exercise that feels very uncomfortable. I would think of anything that gets you really huffing and puffing could, like even just mowing the lawn, if it's a very physically stressful thing for you, could cause a spike. And that's very counterintuitive, right? Because you would think your blood sugar would plummet. And it may after you see that big spike happen. But if you can't figure out why your blood sugar spiked, think, this is one that could be. So just consider, have I been like moving furniture or working out really hard? Another type of physical stress that I have seen cause blood sugar spikes is going to be any kind of surgical procedure. So this is like the body's response in order to heal itself is to cause your body to have plenty of energy available. And then one that's a little more obscure that can cause blood sugar spikes in the same way as any other physical stress would be the use of stimulants. And that includes caffeine. Caffeine in some people does stimulate a response in the liver similarly to stress hormones that are produced by the body. So you might see in response to caffeine a spike in your blood sugar, and that's just the caffeine provoking your liver to release extra glucose. All right, so let's talk now about emotional stressors. And this is what most people think of when they think of chronic stress, like depression and anxiety, those kinds of things. But I want to also just break it down into more specifics because some of us may be experiencing some emotional stressors that we didn't consider. So I want you just to reflect on these as I mention them. Are you overworking? Are you experiencing financial stressors? This is a very common chronic stressor. How about relationship stressors? Right? Maybe with your partner, with your children, or someone that you work with, business relationships, all of those. You could also be experiencing emotional stress because of your health, because you are concerned about your health, you're scared, you have some fear or anxiety about your health conditions. And this is often a chronic problem, so can produce a chronic state of stress. And I also want to mention happy stress. Sometimes we have some exciting events happening in our lives, like, might be getting married, or we're going to have a baby, or we've got something that's really going to change our lives. You buy a new house, or you decide to make a change that you're really happy about, but it's still stressful. It's still causing you to have, lost sleep, disrupted sleep, or just a lot of emotional investment that could show up in your body like chronic stress. So don't forget to consider happy stress too. Now I want to switch gears on this podcast. I want now to give you some tools, some real strategies that will help you shift, because that's essentially what we are trying to do. And in order to do that, you must become aware. You cannot respond to or intervene in a situation where you don't have awareness. And so I'm going to spend a minute talking about that. Remember that the goal of any tool or strategy that you reach for in order to shift yourself out of that stress response is essentially coming down to something very basic. What you are trying to do in a moment that you are experiencing any kind of negative emotion, what you're trying to do is to notice that negative emotion and reach for a strategy that will shift you from negative to either neutral or even to a positive emotion. It might seem kind of like a reach, but I want to talk about how this is possible with these different tools. So once you're able to pick up that you're experiencing a negative emotion, that requires awareness, right? Then you're going to stop. It's a signal to you. I am experiencing a negative emotion. Stop. That for some people is a huge change from what they normally do. Most of us are in a mode of just reacting or even disconnecting or numbing out somehow, reaching for something to do that for us, like food or entertainment or just shopping or something that we can do in order to distract ourselves from the negative emotion. So what I want you to do is when you notice you're having a negative emotion is to just stop first. And before you try to do anything with it, to notice it. And I want you to notice what it is. I want you to name the emotion. I am feeling whatever it is right now. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. I'm feeling stressed out right now. And this is an opportunity for you to intervene. And it is also a very valuable opportunity to notice what you are thinking. Because the truth is, for most of us, unless you have some kind of trauma response, we are creating our stress response with our thinking, if it's an emotional stress, okay? So if you're feeling a negative emotion, or you're just noticing you have some kind of a physical response, a physical type of stress, I want you to stop what you're doing and notice what it is that's causing you to feel this way. And I want you to notice it in your body and name it, and then just take a peek. What am I thinking about right now? And how am I thinking about it? Now what we're going to do is talk about strategies that will shift you from that fight or flight into that rest and relax, or that neutral, peaceful type of emotion. Because remember, what we're trying to do is move from survival mode, where we can deteriorate over time, into a restful mode where we heal, where we have the opportunity to allow those hormones to come down so that you can stop having that stress response and stop spiking your blood sugar. So let's just think about a time specifically where you felt stressed out. Okay, so maybe you were driving and somebody cut you off, or you were on the phone with your insurance company, or just think of a time, an argument or something that made you feel stressed out or overwhelmed or angry or any kind of negative emotion. When you're able to interrupt that and notice it in the moment, you're able to reach for one of these strategies. And different ones of these are going to appeal to different people. That's fine. I want you to find at least one or two of these that you're going to keep in your back pocket and pull out for yourself at some point in the future when you need it. Okay? Because some of these are going to appeal to you and some are not. I'm just going to list them in the priority that I use them. So one of the first things that I reach for when I'm feeling negative emotion is literally the most basic, simple thing you can do, which is, and can be done no matter what you're doing, which is to breathe. Now, this might sound kind of hokey, but I'm going to tell you right now, the breath is incredibly powerful. The breath can stimulate your vagus nerve in a way that you may not have experienced before, because you haven't been intentionally using your breath to do that. Your vagus nerve is the parasympathetic nervous system highway. It is a very strong controller of the tone of your rest and relaxed state. Okay. And so when you stimulate that vagus nerve with breath, you're going to be doing it in a very particular way. You're going to want to be focusing on the breath and bringing it in very slowly, holding it at its top, and then allowing it to leave the body very slowly. I recommend doing 4 to 6 deep, focused breaths through the nose and out through the mouth when you are noticing you're feeling stressed. This could be like when you're driving. This could be when you are cooking and your kids are screaming or fighting around you. It can be done anywhere. The breath is probably one of the easiest, the simplest ways that you can regulate. You can regulate your own nervous system with your breath, okay? So commit to trying this. 4 to 6 deep, slow breaths. And I even tell my kids to do this. Like when you start feeling like you're going to react out of anger, I want you to leave that situation, go into a quiet place, like even in the bathroom, and just breathe deeply 6 times. That will shift you. Okay, so I have some other very basic, simple go-tos for me to be able to regulate my nervous system that I use probably about every day. One of them is going to be movement, moving your body, allowing that stress hormonal response to literally shake out of your body by moving it is a very powerful practice. This can be done discreetly. You can actually tense up your body. If you don't even like exercise, you can just tense up your body from your toes and slowly tense your whole body up and hold it, with the tension all throughout your body, just focusing on the various parts of your body one at a time and slowly tense from the toes all the way up to your head. And if you can do that for just a few moments, it will allow you to release a lot of that energy that is causing you stress. It also allows you to become entirely present with your physical body. I like things that allow me to move. And I have to say, one of the funnest things to do is literally to just run. This isn't as accessible to some of us as others, but if you can just get outside and move your body, like even if you just run for a brief period of time, or I love to think of how my kids move their bodies. Like they skip, they hop, they twirl, they run up the hill or run down the hill. They spin around with their arms wide. Like you can create a feeling of playfulness and excitement and breathe deeply while you are moving your body in a way that will shift you, boom, in a moment right out of stress, overwhelm, fear, all of that. Children actually are such amazing teachers. And I combine movement a lot of times with going outside. Now, some of you would prefer to do something much gentler for yourself, like even just some stretching, even just some gentle yoga or going for a walk. Okay, these are all easy ways to move your body that will shift you as long as you can get out of your head. That's why going outside can for some people be so therapeutic, is because suddenly your senses are putting information in. You're seeing things you haven't been looking at. You're hearing things. You can feel sun or feel the breeze on your skin. So you have all this new information that your body begins to take in from its outside environment. And for a lot of us, that gets our minds off of whatever is troubling us and gets us into that present moment. Just to be connected to your surroundings and to your body can get you out of your head. And so that's why being outside can be such a powerful way to shift yourself. All right, so the other things I love to do are more considered like spiritual practices, but doesn't have to be. One of the most powerful ways that I have found for myself to shift into, seriously, you guys, from negative emotion, I'm talking like I'm feeling pretty crappy right now. I'm angry, I'm agitated, I'm annoyed, something is bothering me, to a feeling of gratitude, of love of life, of joy and thankfulness, of just wanting to serve. Like I can move myself between those two places relatively quickly because I have practiced meditating. Meditation sounds to some of you hokey and may even sound impossible to some of you because you have this expectation that you should be able to quiet your mind and not have thoughts, which is impossible. But I want to open your mind to the possibility that you could just meditate for 5 minutes. You could just close your eyes and you can even do a guided meditation. Those are my favorite. Okay, because they get you listening to a direction and a guide of what to be doing in the moment with your mind, or what to be focusing on or noticing. And what that does is it brings you into your body and into that present moment. And in those spaces, you can really connect to yourself, your higher self, that spiritual part of you that is not your body, that is not your mind. And you begin to notice those thoughts that are passing through your consciousness, and you learn to see them pass without attaching to them, without following them down some kind of rabbit hole that gets you all worked up. Okay. Or you can just begin to see the thought that has been causing you to feel a certain way that you don't want to keep feeling. Meditation for me has literally changed my life. I don't want to sit here and try to sell you that you must do this practice, but I promise you that if you committed to doing it for 30 days, you would not be the same person. I promise you that. It is a powerful, free, available to anyone in any location tool that is incredibly powerful for creating awareness and for shifting your body out of fight or flight into a rest, relax, heal, repair mode. Okay, so those are my favorite go-tos. Now, I want to talk about some others that some of you may prefer. There may be some of you who have a pet that you love. I have new pets, but I also have babies. And for me, I'm definitely going to want to grab up my baby and squeeze her chunky thighs, okay? Or even just think about, like right now, I'm just thinking about squeezing her chunky thighs. I'm thinking about her curls around her head, her beautiful eyes and her smile, okay? And for some of you, you may have someone in your life you can think about or even embrace. And maybe you have a pet that you love just this way, that you can shift, you can use these experiences and even these images and your imagination to create an experience in your mind that shifts you into the feeling of love, into a feeling of joy, into a feeling of gratitude. Those emotions happen in a parasympathetic nervous tone. And so that is connection. That is human connection. And I'm wanting you to reach for one that is deep for you, that really causes you to express emotions that are highly pleasurable. Now, if you can't do that in your mind, okay, maybe that's not working so well for you, then you could just connect with somebody. That means picking up the phone. That means writing an email to somebody or doing some kind of a connection with someone. And I want you to choose a person that lifts you up, someone that makes you laugh, somebody that makes you smile. Have a conversation with that person somehow. And it is a way that you can access those types of emotions and get out of your head and get out of that stress response. Now, you can also do this with yourself. Some of us really benefit from self-reflection in a way that allows us to process some of that negative emotion. You could journal and write. You could have a gratitude journal right by your bedside before you go to bed. You can make a habit of writing down some things that happened to you that day, how you felt about it, and then focus your mind on what you're happy about and what you're thankful for. Now, I just want to wrap up this talk by pointing out a couple of things that some of us may be doing to contribute to our state of chronic stress that we haven't looked at and intentionally tried to deal with. And one of those is sleep deprivation. Prioritizing your sleep has been shown in clinical study after clinical study to be more effective than any antidepressant at improving depression and anxiety. Sleep quality can for some people be a deal breaker. And I'm talking about they're doing everything right, but they are not sleeping well and they have not focused on that as a strategy. And until they do, they're not going to be able to make progress. That's how critical for some people sleep quality is going to be in your ultimate goal of reversing type 2 diabetes. The last thing I want to mention is a practice that many of us have called people pleasing. This is where we say yes to people when we really mean no inside. We're doing things for others with a feeling of overwhelm and resentment. This doesn't benefit anybody, and it does cause a lot of unnecessary stress in many of our lives. We're overextending ourselves. We're asking too much of ourselves, and we're trying to give of ourselves when we really don't have anything to give. And this puts us in a state of chronic stress. In order for you to show up and love others in your life from a place of abundance and unendingness, you must be able to care for yourself in a way where you have love to give. And that means giving to yourself first. Okay, so if you are having a difficult time being in a state of chronic stress, if you don't know how to shift yourself from stress, fight or flight or freeze, into rest and heal and relax and connect and create, right? Those things are happening in a state of parasympathetic nervous system tone. If you don't know how to shift yourself from always being stressed out and stress eating and know your blood sugars are really struggling and you can't figure out how to get your blood sugars down because you don't know how to manage your stress, that is a sign that you need help. Those are the type of people who need to work with me. If that's you, you need to get on my website and get a consult with me so that we can talk about some of these strategies and help you apply them so that you can stop living your life in a way that is slowly depleting and damaging and deteriorating your body. There's help if you will only look for it and reach for it. And I would love to help you do that. Okay, I hope that this podcast brought some light to how important this work is for you to be able to reach your goals and give you some ideas for how you can do this for yourself. Have an awesome week, and I will see you next week. High five for tuning in with me today. You are getting smarter and stronger when you show up for yourself this way. You can get more free tools to help you control type 2 diabetes on my website, sarahtownley.com. And if you're serious about ending your struggle with diabetes, join my membership, The Diabetes Revolution, where you work with me in a community of people just like you. See you on the next episode.